A solemn farewell turned contentious. At the funeral of Catherine, Duchess of Kent, inside London's historic Westminster Cathedral, a single moment shattered the hush: the arrival and demeanour of Prince Andrew. The Duke of York, escorted to the service from Royal Lodge with his former wife Sarah Ferguson, drew audible gasps from onlookers and later, headlines, after being seen laughing near the grieving Kent family. With the King, the Prince and Princess of Wales, and the Duchess of Edinburgh in attendance, the optics of one ill-timed smile overshadowed what should have been an uncomplicated tribute to a much-loved royal matriarch. The day had been scripted for dignity. The Duchess of Kent, revered for her quiet service, her devotion to music and education, and a lifetime of low-key duty, was to be remembered in the measured tones of a royal farewell. Westminster Cathedral, steeped in history and perfectly chosen for its resonance with the Duchess's faith and philanthropy, offered the kind of setting where tradition does the speaking and the living keep silence. The congregation reflected that purpose. Senior royals stood shoulder to shoulder, their expressions even, their focus fixed. Then came the pivot, an unexpected shift in the room's emotional temperature as Andrew and Sarah made their entrance under police escort, a reminder that their movements still carry institutional gravity, even after years of crisis management. The crowd's reaction, surprise first, then murmurs, wasn't about grief, it was about shock. For supporters of the monarchy, seeing Andrew stride into a sacred space with visible confidence felt like salt in a wound the institution has tried hard to dress. For critics, it was proof that reputation and reality remain stubbornly misaligned. What followed hardened impressions. The Duke, at one point outside the cathedral, appeared to share a light moment, laughing beside the very family bidding farewell. Cameras do not forgive timing, neither does a public that expects unambiguous solemnity at a funeral. Inside the royal family, discomfort showed in micro-gestures. King Charles maintained composure, but the heir's expression told another story. Prince William looked strained, a thin line between familial obligation and public duty etched across his face as his uncle shared an aside with Sarah Ferguson. The contrast with other senior royals was stark. The Princess of Wales kept her gaze steady and her movements minimal, the posture of someone who understands that a funeral demands invisibility from the famous. The Duchess of Edinburgh offered the day's most human image. As the coffin was borne away, she blew a small, tender kiss, one of those gestures that needs no narration, only respect. Context is everything, and Andrew's context is heavy. Since the Epstein scandal erupted into full daylight, the Duke of York's public standing has been fundamentally altered. In January 2022, he surrendered honorary military roles and royal patronages, and stepped away from official duties, a step designed to put distance between the institution and a reputational crisis that refuses to fade. The legal landscape in the US continues to keep Epstein's network in the headlines, ensuring that Andrew's name never sits far from controversy. Under such conditions, every rare public appearance is a test. Can he move without pulling the monarchy back into a story it wants to close? Whatever his intent, yesterday's answer, judged by optics alone, was no. A funeral is the hardest stage on which to look inconspicuous. The choreography is tight, the camera lines are unforgiving, and the etiquette is absolute. You speak quietly, you acknowledge grief, you reduce your footprint to almost nothing. Even a brief smile, read out of context, becomes an indictment. It is the kind of misstep that would barely register at a garden party, but detonates at a requiem. The escort from Royal Lodge added another layer. To some, it suggested necessary security logistics, to others, it signaled lingering privilege. The public reads such details not as footnotes, but as statements. And in the current climate, any sign that Andrew moves under a different set of norms rubs against the narrative of accountability the institution has tried to maintain since 2022. The result is a perception gap the palace cannot close with press lines alone. It requires the one commodity that remains scarce in a 24-hour media environment, long stretches of quiet uneventfulness. Fashion, often trivial in other contexts, becomes semiotics at royal ceremonies. Kate's choice of a clean, structured silhouette, Emilia Wickstead's disciplined lines, a discreet Jane Taylor hat, and deep, unfussy accessories, signaled restraint, a visual echo of the day's purpose. The princess's blonde hair, newly softened and deliberately UN-showy, framed a face intent on listening rather than performing. The Duchess of Edinburgh kept her palette subdued and her movements spare. Even Sarah Ferguson's entrance, self-possessed and coordinated with the Duke of York, could have read as respectful were it not for the undercurrent created by Andrew's mere presence. In this kind of theatre, clothing is the score and body language is the libretto. On both counts, most of the cast stayed perfectly on key. Why does a single moment matter? Because Monarchy is an optics machine. Its authority is soft power packaged in rituals that signal stability, humility, and continuity. Funerals are the ultimate exam. The crown doesn't speak, it absorbs. When the camera finds an incongruent smile, it scrambles the message. Instead of a unified farewell, the story becomes a royal who cannot escape his past, and a family forced to carry both grief and reputational risk at the same time. For a public that has extended patience across a difficult decade of transitions, losses, illnesses, and controversies, moments like this feel less like gossip and more like a test of sincerity. There is also an internal tension the public senses even when it is not named, the balance between kinship and duty. The royal family is a family, with all the untidy loyalties and histories that implies. But it is also an institution whose survival depends on the perception that its members know when to recede. In recent months, the Princess of Wales's measured return to public life, while in remission, has reminded audiences how discipline reads on camera: slow pace, small gestures, no sudden moves. Against that example, Andrew's levity played as tone-deaf, whether or not it reflected relief, awkwardness, or a private exchange misread in a public lens. The day's saving grace is that, beyond the clip, most of the service unfolded as intended. The cathedral's liturgy did its patient work. Tributes focused on the Duchess's legacy, the family's formation, once inside, reset to solemn order. Those frames will form the official record, the cortege, the prayers, the faces at rest. And yet, history will file the disruption alongside them, because that is how modern monarchy is archived, by competing images, laid side by side, the quiet competing with the loud. For the palace, the path forward is clear, if not easy. Keep the focus on service and remembrance. Let the most human images carry the day. Resist the urge to explain what cannot be explained without prolonging the story. The monarchy has outlasted louder storms by doing three things very well: narrowing the frame, lengthening the timeline, and trusting that good behavior, repeated without fanfare, outlasts bad headlines. The Duchess of Kent's funeral deserved that approach. In the main, it received it, from almost everyone. What does this moment change? Not the institution's long-term equilibrium, but the near-term calculus around Andrew's visibility. Every appearance carries cost. Every cost must now be justified by necessity rather than habit. For the public, the episode revives a familiar question: when personal history collides with public duty, who protects the moment? At Westminster Cathedral, it was protected by the solemnity of the rite and the discipline of most who attended. The noise came from the margins. Unfortunately, that is exactly where cameras like to live. In the end, the image that should endure is the one that honors the woman at the center of the day: a coffin moving toward the light, a family united in respect, a duchess remembered for grace that never needed spectacle. The rest is commentary, loud, immediate, and in time, passing. The monarchy will hope that what lingers is not a smile at the wrong second, but a life of quiet service that deserved every second of silence it was given.